Well, welcome back. I'm going to talk about strategy now. Where are we going, and then how are we going to get there? These are the two components where, if you remember my 3 lines of sight, hindsight, oversight, and foresight, it's the foresight piece that we want to focus on. I've done a lot of surveys with boards to discern where their time is invested. And typically, boards tend to like the oversight and hindsight components of their jobs. They prefer the policing, and they can get around and dig and feel very important asking questions of management. They're not so good at looking to the future. And we did this survey of, I think, something in the order of 20 companies. So that's 200 directors of how did you invest your time according to these 3 lines of sight. And the answer came back, we invested about 30% of our time to the future, and the other 70% was devoted to either oversight evaluation or hindsight reporting. We then asked the question, in a perfect world, how should you be investing your time as a director on the board? And the answer was completely reversed. We should be spending we should be investing 70% of our time in the future of the corporation, so we're adding value to its ongoing trajectory, and 30% of our time in the oversight and hindsight part of our time investment. So make sure, this is a very simple metric, you can do it on the back of an envelope. How did we invest our time in the last meeting? Hindsight, oversight, and foresight. Just back of the envelope, just try it out. And then make an explicit decision for the next meeting as to how you want to invest your time for that meeting. And that ought to come out of the agenda exercise we talked about in the role of the chair, but I want it to be explicit. I just don't want it to happen. Work out where you ought to be investing your time and then make darn sure that that's what happens to you. And in the next meeting, take that learning and apply it to how the agenda is constructed and how well you did in the previous meeting. The Kaizen continuous improvement thing is essential for keeping your focus on strategy where you can add value. Now, strategy, as opposed to just sort of the once a year, 2-day offsite strategy, because I want it more in your agenda, I would like that to be part of every single board meeting. And I would really, and I work at this as a chair, get an inventory of the strategic concerns of all my directors, and then I bring that to the attention of my management team, and we work away at which ones we're going to take deep dives on, which one we're going to go back through me to my board and say, we don't agree with that one. And therefore, I'm going to be very close to the CEO on these matters. In fact, I go so far as to say, if I'm the chairman of the board, my fundamental operational responsibility is to be the closest friend of the CEO. And I don't mean in terms of drinking partners or going out to dinner together just to socialize. I mean in being there for every single challenge we face, and we're going to face them together. So for example, I was on a major mining company board. I was the chair. The CEO phoned me from Spain, said we've had 2 fatalities in our mine in Spain. It was 3 in the morning in Toronto. And I said, Jochen, do you want me to get on the plane tomorrow morning and be with you? He said, no, I think we can manage this, but I wanted you to know. And I said, well, let's keep in close touch. But I was there for him. In that sense, I'm his closest friend. And I think that's an essential component of getting to a strategic inventory, a strategic understanding so that the board can add value, is to have the chair and the CEO in that kind of a really close, trusting, open relationship. If that's the case, you know the issues facing the company. You can discuss them regularly at each board meeting. And when you go off-site, my advice would be is to get some external people to come and help you think about things in a slightly different way. Typically, the management team won't like that. They'll say, well, we'll prepare the board briefing papers. I would say to myself, why would I want to drink the same bathwater again? If we're in Industry X, why don't we get somebody in who's invested in Industry X or who ran Industry X beforehand and give him or her the chance to comment on our strategy? How would you reallocate the resources? If there's an activist investor, if I'm publicly traded and there's an activist out there agitating, get that activist in and say, if you were managing all of these assets, both physical and financial and human, how would you manage it? So it's a question, I think, of bringing external ideas in to shake the bag, to get a different perspective when you go off-site. It is not very common, but I think it's an essential component of being able to add value to the ongoing trajectory of the business. So, strategy, top of the agenda, 60 to 70% of your time, and please make that an explicit investment decision before each meeting. And then secondly, get ideas from outside, and thirdly, make sure that your chairman and your CEO are closely linked. I'll go back to a theme I had before. If you don't have a great chair, you don't have a chance in the world of being an effective director in adding value. So that's strategy. Sounds simple, tough to do, but you can do it.